In the fall of 2013, a young writer by the name of Brianna Wiest arrived in the city of Lancaster as a new college graduate. While working as a remote journalist from her apartment on South Prince Street, she began to piece together a passion project, a book of essays that would one day go on to become one of the most famous books in the world. In the summer of 2021, 101 Essays That Will Change the Way You Think and The Mountain Is You became the #1 and #2 best-selling books in the United States, Canada, Australia, Germany, the United Kingdom, and France. Since, Brianna's books have gone on to sell over 1 million copies, topping global bestseller lists, and are currently being translated into over 40 languages, making Brianna Wiest one of the most well-read authors of our generation. Tonight, it is our honor to host her as she returns to Prince Street, accompanied by author Bianca Sparacino to discuss her 9th book, The Pivot Year. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm welcome home to Brianna Wiest.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming. We're so happy to see all of your beautiful faces out in the crowd. Well, we can't really see you, but we know you're there. We can hear you. We feel your energy. Thank you for sharing this space with us and taking time out of your day to listen and hold space for this conversation. I am beyond honored to be here with someone I consider one of my best friends and biggest supporters. Being able to support you, Brianna, tonight is honestly one of the greatest things I can say I will do. For those of you who don't know, Brianna is someone who has been in my life for over 10 years. She is the first person who ever believed in me enough to give me a freelance writing position at Thought Catalog, where we continued to do beautiful things together. And it's funny because I was rejected from Thought Catalog 3 times until this beautiful human being said, no, something's there. She saw in me what no one else saw in me, and here we are today. With that being said, back then she was the first person to believe in me, and today she is unfortunately the first person who receives a text every time I have a mental breakdown. Sorry about that, Bri, but you are with me for life now. Brianna has effortlessly guided me through so many aspects of my life that I didn't think I would be able to weather on my own. And I know her words have done that for so many of you out there, so you know exactly what I'm speaking of. And so when you know someone for 10 years, and they have helped you through so many things, from should I get a hot dog at Disneyland, which is an actual question I asked her a month ago, to I am experiencing one of the most soul-crushing heartbreaks ever. How do I wake up tomorrow morning? How do I do it? So it spans a lot, and I've received many a voice note, which we call personal podcasts now, from Brianna. And I am spiraling in my home, pacing around my little studio apartment, and Brianna opens up the voice note and she goes, okay, I have a lot to say about this. 1 second, I just need to get situated. I'm sitting on a mountain right now. I'm like, all right, okay, we are connecting through space and time in very, very, very different ways, but I appreciate it. I'm thinking I'm gonna get a, keep going, keep putting your heart out there. Nothing is real, let love destroy you, etc., etc. Do I not receive a 15-minute to 20-minute voice note that is just so soul-affirming? It changes your life. Every Monday, every Tuesday, every Wednesday, I ask for her help a lot. And that, in turn, has unfortunately brought me here, tasked with this opportunity to ask her questions. But because I have been through so much with her, it is almost impossible to pick just 5 to 10 questions that I want her to answer, because I have seen the value that she has brought to my life, and I want to be a channel for that for her tonight. I want to be able to facilitate the kind of conversation that will allow for her to shine her light on all of you in the way that she has absolutely shined her light on me. And so I'm going to go with a very easy question to begin, of course, because I'm kind of freaking out right now. Brianna, hello.
Hi.
What inspired you to write The Pivot Year?
So first of all, Bianca, I have to say thank you. You are one of the greatest gifts of my life. Thank you for being here tonight, but thank you for being here with me every day. You are such an integral part of my career in a way I don't think anyone could ever fully understand. And thank you for those kind and beautiful words. And I will send you a voice note every day until the day you die. Second, thank you to Midtown Scholar Books for inviting us here tonight, to the Fulton Theatre for the space, and for all of the people in Lancaster who welcomed me back with so much love and so much warmth. And I've said it like 5 times, but you've got to hear it one more time because this is like the most important thing for me tonight, which is that 101 Essays was written on this street. I lived on an apartment 1 block down. I know. And a lot of it at Prince Street Cafe. I mean, literally across the street. So to be back here tonight, literally on the other side, and metaphorically on the other side, is surreal beyond anything that I can say. And thank you, thank you, thank you to every single one of you who came out tonight, who has ever bought my books, who has supported. I mean, you are the gift of my life. I really, really mean it. I can't believe you care. I can't believe anyone cares. I wake up every day and I can't believe, I promise you. I cannot believe anyone cares the way they do. So thank you, thank you. Okay. What inspired the Pivot Year? So there's a simple answer and then there's a more complex one. And so the simple one is that I think the most common feedback that I've gotten about my books is that people really enjoy reading them piecemeal, that they've really enjoyed like 1 essay a day or like a page a day, or that they would enjoy like the posts for that same reason, which was that it was digestible. And I think that in a world that's constantly demanding our attention in every which way, to be able to read something that resonates so deeply, I hope, but is concise, but also is concise enough that it can be part of your daily routine, I think makes sense to me why it would be so appealing to people. So over time, I'd gotten that response so often, I realized that you were all asking for a book of meditations. And so ask and you shall receive. And I decided that that was the next project I wanted to do. But then the more complex answer is what made me land on making the common thread between each of the days change and growth and the resistance to that when we as human beings are kind of evolved, for nothing more than that. For change, it's the only constant. And the reason I chose that is because whenever I'm focusing in on just one topic in particular, I kind of try to get like an intuitive sense for what I think people and collectively are kind of going through. I did the same thing with self-sabotage. But this time, I had a strong sense that people were feeling almost like they were in sinkholes a bit, like really wanting to move forward or make change, whether it's like small or big, but feeling very, very stuck. And so stuckness and growth, those are all the themes throughout. And so, okay, that's the long and short answer.
All right, beautiful. I know that we have talked a lot about inspiration. As writers, we obviously have so many moments where we ourselves have been deeply impacted by art. And you put out 9 books, and you have shared your heart with the world. Obviously, there must be moments, like you want the Pivot Year to hold space for others in their daily lives. Like you want the Pivot Year to be this anchor of hope for people that encourages them to change every day. What was the first experience that you had with a piece of art or a book that you can mention, or even a moment in time that made you realize the power of language and the fact that it anchors us in this responsibility as artists to share ourselves with the world? What comes to mind when you think about the pivotal pieces of art that have made you into who you are and the version of yourself that you share with us and inspire within us every day?
So it's so many books, but there are a few that I want to touch on in particular. So from the years of like 2013 to 2017, I read, I'm really not exaggerating, read every psychology, philosophy, self-improvement book in Barnes & Noble that was released. And at the time, I couldn't afford to buy all of those books. So I would sit in that little like cafe and get like a $2 coffee, and I would bring a notebook and I would read them and take notes. And if anyone here works at Barnes & Noble, I'm so sorry, because I know you're not supposed to do that. It's a long time ago. And so from that, something that I tell people a lot is that I'm not really, I would say, a naturally like emotionally intelligent person, and I would have said that at one point in time. I realized it would take me like a few extra steps to arrive where it seemed like other people could more easily arrive. And so, reading for me was something that gave me so much healing and growth, because in a way it was a superimposition of someone else's words into my own mind. And so, the books that have changed me, those authors taught me to think the way that they wrote. And so that's also the gift that I hope to give on to other people. So some of the books that really come to mind as being game changers is The Wisest One in the Room, The Obstacle is the Way, The Big Leap, but the most important one, and I would say like the first one that just like ripped me open, was Tiny Beautiful Things by Cheryl Strayed. Oh yeah. And it's a collection of advice columns from The Rumpus. It was popular like a decade or so ago. And Cheryl at the time was an anonymous advice columnist, Dear Sugar. And what it was about that book that touched me so deeply was that Cheryl wrote just like the kind of woman that I wanted to be, someone who was so empathetic and compassionate, but also like didn't take any shit and just like said it like it was, and like was just being so brave and courageous about pursuing her art and who she wanted to be and what she wanted to do. And I still think to this day that Cheryl is one of my greatest inspirations. And it's not lost on me that my book as well is also like a collection of pieces from the internet. So I'm sure that like unconsciously inspired me in some way. But Tiny Beautiful Things, you all have to order it. I really mean it. That's my answer.
Okay, it's a beautiful answer. Thank you for sharing that. Speaking of books, obviously we're here to celebrate your 9th book, The Pivot Year, which is an incredible release. I don't know if any of you have had the chance to read your copies yet, but it's life-changing. And in your inspiration for the book, you were talking to me about really wanting to drive home the fact that this was a book that was gifting people these daily meditations, these possibilities in their mornings or whenever they flipped the page to see something that anchored them or cracked them open and helped them to change, and that these micro shifts and these changes would, compound on one another. And in a year, you would look back, you would close that last page of that book, and you would kind of look back on the journey that you took alongside it and within the words that it was giving you, and you would realize that you have genuinely grown and changed in the quiet and in those small moments. And so I want to ask you, in this last year, what is a belief or a habit or anything along those lines? What is a micro shift that you have experienced that has changed your life? How have you changed in a year?
It's such a beautiful question. I swear to God the answer is putting my phone on Do Not Disturb. I'm not even kidding you. And I'm trying to make it more poetic, but that's genuinely the answer. And just having more boundaries in terms of like how accessible I am. And nature has been such a huge part of my life and my journey, and I'm outside every day and hiking every day. And to be able to experience that one-on-one without this constant like barrage and interference of like information and tasks and contact, even though it is beautiful in its own way, for me has been like extraordinarily transformative. But I want to also go back to something else you said about Pivot Year being like a little thing each day. I was nodding very hard at that because that is a big part of the concept, which is that we're always waiting for breakthrough moments, but real change happens like at the level of a gesture, like it happens in micro shifts. It happens like a little and a little and a little until we hit a tipping point. Actually, The Tipping Point by Malcolm Gladwell speaks to that very, very well, yeah. And so, we think that, our lives transform overnight, and sometimes they do. But most of the time, we kind of redefine, I would say, the boundaries of our comfort zones gradually. And what we are comfortable with, what we make ourselves comfortable with, and what we perceive to be just normal and aligned and like what we should do, typically is what we do. And so our job really is to prime ourselves consciously and unconsciously to decide, what kind of life do I want to live and what kind of person do I want to be, and to surround yourself really every single day with what I call your expanders, the people and the places and the things and the art and whatever else that presses up against those limits and shows you another way. And then to surround yourself with them so much and so often that it almost becomes defaulted to you. And can I say something else about change that's not related to
Please.
Okay.
Please. Imagine I was like, no. Sorry, you can't. I would like to talk now.
Thanks.
Go. Tell us about change.
Okay. So the other thing that was so heavily on my mind while I was writing was that something I'm really just interested in is that we kind of are like organic matter that's become aware of itself, which means that not only are we evolving just like everything else that's alive, but we have a conscious choice in how we evolve. And what I call that is conceptualizing your potential. And so that's like a thing that only human beings can do, that we know of. But no other mammal, no other organic matter on the earth or anywhere can do what we can do, which is that we can conceive of things that do not yet exist, and then we have the executive functioning to be able to execute and make them real. And we're doing it all the time. We do it every day. Like the chair I'm sitting on, the light that's on me, and the microphone I'm holding, these were things that just all had their origins in a human mind. And so we have this gift of being able to conceive of an idea before we act on it and make it real. And of course, artists do this all the time, but people do this all the time. You do this when you're cooking. Like, it's an everyday thing, but we use that gift of conceptualizing potential like to our own detriment all of the time. Instead of imagining, what if I could conceive of the potential of who I could be and what I could do and how my life could shift, we use it to conceive of like the worst possible outcome and why everyone hates me and, all of those things. And so the more that I thought about it, I was like, well, it's interesting that we kind of have like this part of our brain, like the prefrontal cortex, the communication, linguistics, imagination, creativity. But then we also have that lower part, that brainstem, right? So that's controls survival, and survival would just mean safe. So it's like almost like literally in our skulls, but also in our lives, have these two coexisting but conflicting forces. One that wants us to stay exactly where we are, and the other that is trying to push us to become something different or more evolved. And so I think that a lot of the time when we feel stuck, we kind of feel like we're dying. And the reason why is because something in us is trying to die. That identity that we built and conceived of the potential of from like a limited perspective before we knew what was possible or who we could be, that's trying to leave us so a greater truth can come through. And again, this stuff doesn't happen overnight. It's a daily practice. It's a daily practice of reminding yourself of what could be and acting on what could be and realigning yourself over and over and over again until you have created in your life, a comfort zone that moves you in the direction you actually want to go. And so that's something else I really, really hoped to do with the book. And you had said it very well. Literally what I told you, which was that my very first writing mentor was a songwriter from Nashville, and her name was Trina. And hi, Trina, if you ever see this video. One of the first things she taught me was that until she could hear in her head the last note, she wasn't ready to write the first one. And it doesn't literally mean that the entire thing is written before you start. What I took it to mean was you have a sense of the essence of what you will gain at the end or what you will feel or hear at the end before you start. And every single one of my books, anything I ever do, I have to feel that last line. I have to feel that, oh, that's what they would get by the end before I can start. And 100%, that's exactly what went through my mind, which was if I could give you a seed of potential every single day and you could meditate on it for a year, what would happen? And I thought, your whole life would change in a year. And then the pivot year, that's how I got the title.
Beautiful. Your tangents, we love them.
Thanks.
As if you asked if you could just do what you did. As if you asked for permission. You don't need permission. Take my microphone away from me next time, okay? No, so we're talking about change, and we're talking about these micro shifts and these little seeds of potential. It's beautiful. It's beautiful to envision and to know that we as human beings have the free will to change our lives. But it's hard. But it's really difficult. Change is really hard. And one of your most famous quotes that I think so many people in this room have definitely read and probably really deeply resonated with is, your new life is going to cost you your old one. Right? When I read that, it was so soul-affirming because it spoke to this fear that we all have within ourselves. And it spoke to the fact that we have to let a lot go in order to make space in our lives for new things to find us. And you have helped me through this on so many levels. And I want you to speak to anyone who might be in this position where they're standing at a crossroads of their life. And they are about to make a decision, and they know they should go in the direction that feels uncomfortable. There is this intuition, but it feels like fear sometimes. And it is very, very difficult to discern between, do I actually know? I feel this and I want to change and I want to grow, but it's hard, and so I think I also want to stay still. How do you discern that? How do you make that choice? How do you move towards a future that the world hasn't exactly affirmed as possible for you?
Okay, so the first thing you're talking about is the difference between fear and intuition. And fear is loud and intuition is quiet. Fear keeps you small and intuition expands you. So that's the first part. But then the second part is knowing that you cannot lose what is for you. You really, really can't. And any road you take to avoid it will be the path that leads you right back to it. Trust me. I'm sure not a lot of people know this, but I think in 2015, I quit Thought Catalog. And the parting gift that I was given from my boss was a class at Esalen in Big Sur, California, which I had never heard of before. And I was away from the company, but working like freelancing for about 7 years. And by the end of the 7 years, I thought, okay, I've made a huge mistake, like I need to go back. This was the publishing house that did my books and made my career. We know it was everything. What I understand now is that even through what I once considered one of my biggest mistakes, I was also given one of the greatest gifts, which is my home. And so even the detour was part of the path. And so even though I quit, I found my way right back to it because this is who was meant to do my books. This is exactly where I was supposed to be. And everything I learned in those 7 years when I was away from it, I wrote for Forbes and Teen Vogue, and I learned all of these things about owning a business and whatever else. Every single one equipped me to come back in 2021 as a partner. And I wouldn't have known what to do had I not had that, growth concourse, I call it. And so until you've seen it in your own life, it's hard to believe. But if you can trust me just a little, you really can't lose what's meant for you, because one of the other lines of your new life, the page where that says your new life will cost you your old one, is the things that are meant for you will meet you on the other side. And not only do they meet you on the other side, they tend to meet you on the other side in a way that's like bigger and more pronounced and clear and more important because you're more ready for them. And so it's a combination of discerning what is trying to keep me small and what is trying to move me in the direction of who I really am. Understanding that most of us have to make leaps and choices and decisions. Sometimes we look back and think that was the wrong one, but that if it is really, really meant to be, you will find your way back to it. And just to live with a little bit of that faith. And to know that we're all scared all the time. I'm scared every day. Nothing that I'm doing, please listen to me, not one thing I am doing today was ever communicated to me to be even in the realm of possibility. Not even close. Independent authors from small publishing houses don't do this. I just held a torch lit by my own desire and made a way down my own path. And the more that I did that, the more that I realized that all I was really afraid of was wanting to feel safe, or I would say instead not feeling safe anymore. But safe is just what we let ourselves get used to, and that anything new, no matter how good, will feel scary until it's also familiar. That's also the big leap and your upper limit, which is that when good, beautiful, wonderful things come into your life, you have a subconscious limit for how much good you're used to feeling and you're willing to feel. And so when something big and new comes in, or you're going after it, your upper limit switch gets tripped and you start unconsciously self-sabotaging to go back to your comfortable baseline. So that is also why incremental growth is so important, because you don't want to keep tripping your upper limit switch. You want to grow and expand in a way that keeps you centered, that keeps your nervous system feeling regulated and keeps you grounded. And life doesn't always give us the opportunity to grow in that way. Sometimes growth can be so sudden and catalyzed by things that are so unexpected. But when we do have a choice about who we want to be and how we want to grow, to do it slowly and a bit each day, I think is really important.
I needed that one, actually. That's why I asked the question. You said that when we make these decisions and when we start to envision a life that we want for ourselves and we start to move towards that life, we can tend to look behind ourselves and look at everything that we left behind. We can look at all of the decisions that we could have made but didn't. And it reminds me a lot, we talk about this a lot, you and I, and you reference it in your writing. There's this quote, and it talks about an orange tree. And you're standing in front of this orange tree, and there are so many juicy, delicious options to pull down and to have. And you can choose this branch or that branch, but each branch you choose branches off into another branch and another branch and another branch. And then suddenly you're looking at a whole forest of all of these options and all of these timelines and all of these separate universes that you could potentially have. And while that sounds beautiful because it's speaking to all of the possibility in life and all of the potential that exists within ourselves and the universe around us, it can also be a little paralyzing. What if I make the wrong choice? What if I choose the wrong branch or the wrong orange? What if I make a decision and I look back and I realize that it wasn't the right decision? Or what if it feels like the right decision, but I can't trust that it was the right decision? I guess what I'm trying to ask is, how do you let go of those what ifs?
That's a really good question. Well, first of all, I just think that everyone has a process of trial and error. And I think that that's normal and healthy. I tried so many different types of writing and so many things until I found my way into the one thing that really clicked. And I think that that's a huge part of the journey as well, which is, I always say that to leap is, to make a big leap rather, is not to leap once, but to leap 1,000 times, and to keep pivoting, and to keep adapting, and to keep adjusting. And I've found that in everything that I've done, I have had to constantly be refining it and changing it and shifting. But if I stuck to it and I stuck with it, that I would get closer and closer and closer to that very certain truth. And I mean, it takes a long time to pull the weeds out of the garden, so to say. Things that might look like growth, but then you realize it's not going anywhere. And so I think that an important question to ask is, will this person, place, thing, or opportunity help me become more of the person that I want to be? And if the answer is no, then it's probably not for you. Not long term anyway, because you have to think of things in the context of not just what is it to do them, but who do I become through the process of doing them, because your character is very much your fate. Not my quote, it's a Stoic quote. But it's true, which is that the essence of who you are, which, in a lot of ways you're born with, and in others you can build, sets the tone and foundation for your life. And so that's been a question that I've asked myself so many times. And every single time I would, come back to a slightly clearer but differentiated answer. But over time, I arrived at where I am now. And then I think you're at a point where you have to make peace with the fact that if you're giving yourself in pieces to everything, you're not experiencing the whole of anything. And so you have to decide what you're going to care about and then just let go of all the rest.
Beautiful. And I know you speak a lot about that in the pivot year and putting your feet firmly where they land and trusting that you are meant to be where you are meant to be. I mean, the pivot year is such a beautiful book, and you have so many insights inside of it. And to me, and to I'm sure every single person in this room, it really does seem like you have it all figured out. But I also know you as an incredible friend, and I know that as a writer as well, you write from a place of learning, not knowing. You don't write these books to say, well, this is how you do it, and this is how it's all going to unfold, and if you just do X, Y, and Z, then everything's going to be great. It's still going to come with its challenges, right? And I know that you are learning, and you are growing, and you are processing as you're writing a book relative to learning and growing and processing. So it's like saying, I have my knees to the floor too. Life is trying to weather me as well, and we're doing it together. And that's why we can see so much of ourselves in these words. And I think that humanizes you in a way when we can really distill it and say, I'm here with all of you right now. I don't know anything more, anything less. We are all just doing it together. We are all just walking each other home, hand in hand. And so I want to ask you, what is a very human challenge you are dealing with right now? What is something that you are still learning through and still growing through and still trying to process in your life? What's challenging you right now, Bree?
I would say being seen is the answer. Hello. But in general, yeah, being seen. And I'd reached the end of the road in doing things the way I had done them. And I realized that I myself had to connect with you and beyond the third party of the book. So it's like I would pour my soul into the words, and then you would find the words. And it was kind of like three, you know what I mean? But I found that there's something a lot more powerful of experiencing it directly. So whether that's with my voice or with myself. And I've spent so many years, I think, just not wanting to be seen and feeling insecure. And so every day that I'm doing this, I'm like, I really hope I'm not screwing up. And then I ask myself the question over and over again, which is, when I get to the end of my life, who is the woman I want to be? And when I think about my 90-year-old self, and what would she say? What would she tell me to do? She would tell me I'm an idiot and to go for it. And there's nothing to be afraid of. But it's hard to have that unless you ask yourself to expand your perception. I mean, I think there's more things than that, but the being seen one is definitely coming up very, very often for me right now.
Yeah, that's really difficult, and you show up every single day and you allow yourself to be seen, not only physically, but also in your words, and that's
harder, actually. and somehow that's the one that's way easier for me. I swear to God.
People think it would be the opposite, right? It's easy to
think?
walk outside. This is my face. This is me. Hey, what's up?
Post
I'm
a picture of
human.
myself. Never.
Flay my heart open for the whole entire world
and
to
give
see.
it to you on all day.
Easy.
I don't even think about it. Someone asked me that in Germany. They were like, is it hard to write like that and share it? I was like, no, I don't even think about it. I really don't. And then it's post a photo of yourself. I'm like,
I don't think you realize how many people can probably relate to that.
Do you relate to that? Okay, all right.
There it is, ladies and gentlemen. Bree, we talk a lot about letting go. Having this deep, radical acceptance for the things that want to leave our lives. But, I mean, just in our own personal conversations, we've conversed so much about everything we have ever tried to let go of having claw marks in it. We don't ever want to let go. Our hearts grip at these things. And I think everyone in here probably can think to an experience where they really, deeply wanted something. I wanted it to be you. I wanted it to be time. I wanted this career opportunity. I wanted this door to open, and it just wasn't happening. I think you have carried me through this journey of radical acceptance in such a beautiful way, and I would have been really upset if I didn't ask you to also speak to anyone else in the audience who might be on that journey as well. How do you accept when you don't want to? How do you let go when you just want to hold on, when you want to try harder and give more and love harder and try and give and try and pour and give and try, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera? How do you?
Well, you already know what I'm going to say because I say it to you every 3 days.
Personal podcast, let's go.
So the first thing is that most of the time, the only things you lose are what was built for a person you no longer are. And as you continue to grow, things are going to naturally fall away from you. That is a part of life. That is a part of being human. And it's supposed to hurt. It's not supposed to be easy to let go of things you love or that you wanted, but it's also an important thing to make yourself endure and process. Because if you don't, you become suffocated beneath, all of the things that you've probably outgrown or no longer in alignment. And then the life inside of you that wants to be lived also gets suffocated beneath it. So that's first of all, that it's not supposed to be easy to unwind yourself from the things you love. It's always going to be painful. And it's not about getting to a place where it's not painful, but being willing to endure that pain and have resilience through that. And resilience, by the way, is not, I don't feel anything. It's that I can go to the depths of this feeling and process it, and I'm going to come on the other side, and I'm going to be okay. But then the other thing is, you tell life what, and life tells you how. So if one particular path didn't work, life is going to show you another way. So if you're saying, I want soulmate love, and life says, not with them, it doesn't mean it's the end of soulmate love. It just means not with them. If you're asking for an opportunity like in your career, and the door doesn't open, it doesn't mean you're never going to have a better job. It just means that wasn't the door. And so it's not confusing those two things, which I think is what we do all of the time. It's like, okay, well, this is the end of the line. If this one specific thing didn't work out, then that's it. And it's like there's so many variables that you can't see from where you currently stand, but often you can look back in time and piece everything together and see a more holistic view of your life, and you understand exactly why things did or didn't work out the way they did and what was gained and lost through those transits. But it's understanding that you can still hold that what, that what that you're meant for never leaves you, but you can't stay attached to the how, because that's what's going to just destroy you.
Beautiful. I love that answer. And I've heard that answer many exactly. I'm acting surprised. I'm I receive this once a week. I have a personal newsletter from Brianna in my inbox every day. The theme of tonight is growth and having the courage to grow. And I think that we take it upon ourselves to fix and to mend. And sometimes we may not see the purpose when it feels like it's not happening within a specific set timeline. We know that healing isn't linear, but we oddly think that it is, and we think that if we just did a specific thing or read a certain book that, the dark would go away and the wound wouldn't hurt anymore and the ache would be gone. And that's obviously not the case. And I'll never forget another thing that I read from you, which was, you didn't deserve what happened to you, but you owe it to yourself to heal. Sometimes we experience things at the hands of life that are unfair, and you are the first person to say, you know what, sometimes there really isn't a reason. Sometimes things are just really hard and they suck, for lack of poetic wording. It just gets hard and dark, and it can be really difficult to see your way through that. But you still owe it to yourself, to this future version of yourself, to heal and to try and to just dig yourself out. And so if anyone is in a position where they're digging themselves out of the dark, can you speak to them right now?
Mm-hmm. So first of all, that I learned also from Cheryl Strayed in Tiny Beautiful Things, when she talks about how in life there are going to be things that weren't your fault, but they will sometimes become your responsibility. And it happens to people all the time in all kinds of different ways, and it's not fair and it's not right. But if you don't become the pivot, well, it's called a pivot character actually, is kind of the one that like steps out and is the change maker, usually in a bloodline, but it can be in any way. Is it fair that it's on your shoulders to do that? No, but if you don't do it, who will? And if you don't do it, what life do you deny yourself because you didn't? And so, that was Cheryl Strait that taught me that. But the other thing is, when you're in the valley, because what you're describing is the hardest part, right? When it's like, a lot of your outcomes in life are proportionate to the number of inputs you put in. And when you're in that part where it's like input, and you're not getting the outcome that you most want, that's the time when your faith is forged. That's the time when you learn to believe in yourself. That's the time when you find strength, when you keep going, keep knocking, even though every door stays closed. And most people give up is the problem. They knock on 3 and say, oh, okay, well, but it's the consistency. It's the consistency and it's understanding that for every one successful thing you see on the surface, like 1,000 things went on behind the scenes, And to find within yourself the belief so much in what you're doing that you're willing to keep doing it for the sake of it until you do reach that tipping point, and then it all. The other analogy that I make for it a lot is like getting a rocket ship into orbit. It's like it is so hard to get it off the Earth. But then once it's out there, it's floating, it's doing its thing. But most people give up kind of a quarter of a way through. And oftentimes, weirdly enough, like right before the breakthrough is when you feel most like exhausted and like, okay, this isn't gonna work. But, I think that it also becomes a moment where you get to learn, how much do I want this? How true is this? How much do I care? And if the answer becomes, well, I don't want it enough or care about it enough to keep going, well, then that gives you an answer as well.
The healing is always worth the effort, even if you can't see the road in front of you. And healing is, I think, why we read the books we read and we consume the art we consume, and why you have touched so many souls and lives. And so I want to ask you, obviously we're all here and we're doing the work and we're developing ourselves and we're just hoping to become this version of ourselves that is worthy of this happiness. I think that's all we really want, connection and fulfillment. And I want to know in your mind's eye, in your heart, along the journey that you have walked right now in this moment, how would you define happiness?
Oh, that's a good one. I actually think it's more about peace.
Yes. How would you define peace, Brianna?
It's just being at that neutral state within yourself every day, where you're kind of at the center point where you can move through the highs and the lows without getting stuck in one or the other. Because when you're always chasing the high, then you're in a hamster wheel you can't get off of, and you're not really making any progress. You're just going around and around and around. And when you're stuck in the low, it's just kind of the same thing. But when you're in the center and you're moving through all of that, I think that's when you can step into, the fullest expression of who you are, and also what it means to be a person, which is that, you're willing to love because you're okay with having to grieve one day, that kind of thing. I think that's my answer.
Okay. You're like, final answer, I think?
That's my final answer.
God, I love you. All right. You write a lot about healing in the pivot year and moving forward and becoming this version of yourself that you are proud of. And that always makes me think about our younger selves, obviously. And they say that we fight tooth and nail to become the kind of person who our younger self would feel safe with. The adults that we are is someone who would have consoled and affirmed and would have held, that past version of ourselves. And so I want to ask you, if you could see a younger version of yourself in front of you right now, what would you tell her?
Oh, Bianca.
I told you this was going to be a hard question. We also didn't practice any of these questions, but I said, I got a doozy for you. I got a doozy for
Yeah,
you.
was this the one you've been
I was
telling me about?
actually like, you know, when your annoying sibling is like, oh, just wait, I got something for you. I got something for, and she's like, okay, I know you're gonna ask me a bunch of questions I haven't heard, and I'm like, oh, just wait. The second to last question, I'm gonna get you. And she's like, okay, like, relax, please. Anyways, that's the question. So, surprise.
Oh my God, okay. It's like a lot of thoughts that don't connect together. Well, the first thing I would tell her is, I know you don't even want to be alive right now, but one day you'll be at the Fulton Theatre talking about your 9th book, and you really will want to be. So that's number one. I would love to give her a lot of practical advice. I would love to tell her to open an investment account now. I would tell her to stop highlighting her hair. No, I'm really serious. These are the answers. I'm sorry, that's what you're getting. I would tell her that she just has to keep going, and that sometimes when you feel like you don't belong anywhere and like you don't fit anywhere and like everything that you want seems like it's never been done, that's in you because you're going to be a way shower, and everything you do to get yourself, you know, out of your own dark hole, you're going to write down as a guide, and it's going to get other people out. And I would tell her to just keep going. I know it's really simple advice, but I really would say that.
No, it's beautiful advice, and I think a lot of us would talk to our younger selves in the exact same way, including the point about the investment banking, which I've 32 years old. I've not done that yet, so thank you. I think you might have changed my life tonight. Earlier in our conversation, and we only have 2 more questions to go, so earlier in our conversation, you made a point, and I just thought about this question, but you made a point about a question that you have to ask yourself every single time you come up against this limiting belief. Is this going to serve me? Is this going to grow me? Is this something that I want walking beside me into that future, into the better version of myself? Are there any other questions we can impart on people today that they should carry with them throughout their days? Anything that they should ask themselves each day or when they come up against opposition that might be like an anchor, might be a way to kind of self-inquire and get their feet on a foundation in order to move forward with a lot of clarity?
Yeah. What is this trying to teach me? For everything, all the time. Everything hard, everything painful, every challenge you think you're never going to get through, everything you lose, everything that hurts. What is this trying to teach me? And if you ask yourself that over and over and over again, and you are very, very sincere in your pursuit of that answer, you will find a kind of like a connection inside of you to a wisdom that is greater than you, but it's in all of us. And I say this all of the time, which is that anything you read in my books that you feel like a deep resonance, and people say this all the time, like, how did you know? Or this is the exact right time, or, you know, it's like this was written exactly for me. And it's like, well, it's because it was written for me. And what that would indicate, I would say, is that you and I aren't so different on the inside, right? And so that's what I really think it's about.
Beautiful. I have one more question, and I'm getting the wave. I'm expecting the Oscars music to start soon to get us off of stage, but I'm going to push it a little. No one get mad at me. One last question for you. Brie, if you could have every single person in the world believe one thing, what would it be?
Okay, actually, how much time do I have?
You're good.
Okay.
Time is a construct.
Okay, all right. Okay. So can everybody just for 1 second, I only have a few minutes, but can you all close your eyes for me? And I can't really see you, to be honest, so I'm just having a lot of faith in you right now. Okay. So just for like 1 minute, I want you to just pretend that you're not in this theater. Just let it all fade away for 1 minute. I want you to pretend that you are sitting in an empty room with 2 chairs facing one another. And you are sitting on one chair, and the chair that you're looking at is empty. And I have to do this really quickly. So if you can't quite find it now, take this home and keep playing with it, because it will come to you. I want you to pretend that your highest potential future self walked into the room and sat down on the chair in front of you. The version of yourself that is the happiest, the most healed, the most in love, the most successful, and however you define that. Your highest potential future self. And look at everything you can find about them. Look at their hair. Look at what they're wearing. Feel them. When you see them, can you nod for me? Give me a big nod, because it's really hard to see you. I'm going to wait until I see as many nods as I can. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, open your eyes. That's who you actually are. That's who you really are. And everything else is an illusion. Everything else will pass. Everything else is something that you constructed from social consciousness. So basically, it's an adaptation of self. That person is who you actually are. And that is the person you owe everything to. That is the person you're doing all of this for. And that is the person that you are moving toward. And so that, if I could get everyone in the world to believe one thing, it would be that your true self, the one who is living quietly on the inside, you are not the pain. You are not your circumstances. You are not whatever temporary moment you find yourself in. You are that person on the inside. And the journey of your life is finding the courage to be them. And then, if I could add on another one, if I could get everyone in the world to believe just one thing, it's that there are things out there so good you wouldn't know to ask for them. And you have no idea. You really have no idea how good it can get and how good it can be, except you do know. This is why you're uncomfortable, because it's that inner voice inside saying, I was meant for more than this, there is more than this, and I have to go find it. So that discomfort is not here to punish you. Discomfort is your ally. And you had asked me a question before about happiness, and I said peace. And I meant to say one other thing I didn't say, but it fits in right here, which is that I never knew or felt peace until basically now. And to me, it's that I wake up every single day, and I really mean this from the bottom of my soul, and I think to myself, if I died tonight, I would be absolutely fine, because I know that I was the person I was meant to be, and I did what I was meant to do, and I would be fine with it. So, that's it.
Well, that's the end of that. So I don't even want to speak. I want to walk off stage right now, because we just want to leave you all with that. But thank you for sharing so much of your heart with us. I want you to be able to say goodbye to everyone. I have an announcement after you do, but know that you have negative 4 seconds. So.
Jesus, okay. Thank you, really. Thank you all for coming. And especially to all the people that we know traveled. Please, I know it's a weeknight and everyone has things to do, but we would really love to say hi to you out there and have a chance to thank you ourselves. And to everyone else who I won't have a chance to thank myself. I appreciate you more than I can say. I'm sorry. It's like I'm just crying now.
Once the tears start, it's game over. All right, everyone. So we are going to see you outside. We want to talk with you. We want to personalize your books for you. If you're okay with just the signed copies that you have, we will see you again soon. I have been reminded and I must say it because I've gone over time and I'm a people pleaser and I don't want anyone to be mad at me, that we could talk about that later, but that this is a no contact signing. Obviously, Brianna has been traveling around the world and we are just trying to keep her safe. So yeah, we can't wait to meet you, and we'll see you in like 3 seconds. Okay.